What's up, Warrior Nation? Thanks for tuning in to the Warrior Rewind, where we take time to visit with members of the Valley Christian athletics community, past and present. Once a warrior, always a warrior. This is your host, Rob Fair, class of 2009, Valley Christian Assistant Athletic Director, and Warrior football and lacrosse coach. As we continue to schedule guests on the Warrior Rewind, I want to know who it is that you would like to hear from. So feel free to connect with me on Twitter at RobFair3 or email me at rfair@vcs.net to nominate a new guest for the show. Now let's get to work. Today's guest is unique in that he coached both the men's and women's basketball programs at Valley Christian during his tenure as a coach for the Warriors. Coach Steve Cotton enjoyed a very successful 11-year career at VC, highlighted by CCS championship victories in 2004 and 2005 for the boys, and again in 2010 for the girls. The boys also won the WCAL championship in 2005. In 2001, Coach Cotton was at the helm during one of the most storied seasons to date in all of Warrior athletics, where he took the boys' team on to win the Mount Hamilton Athletic League Championship and the CIF Nor Cal Championship. Coach Cotton was also voted as the 2001 MHAL Coach of the Year. Today, Coach Cotton is still coaching in its truest form at AT&T, where he is coaching grown men to sell AT&T's services. Coach Cotton, thanks for being on the Warrior Rewind.
Rob, thanks for having me. I feel honored to contribute to what you're still doing there at Valley Christian. So thank you very much.
No doubt. The first question I'd like to ask you, for somebody who's coached for such a long time, at Valley Christian, is when you look back at your time as a Warrior, I won't ask you to say who your favorite athlete you ever coached was, but instead I'd like to ask, what was your favorite type of athlete to coach, to be around, to have on a team?
Rob, that's a great question. It's broad in a sense that, when you think about the characteristics and, the individuals that I was so blessed to coach, if I were to land on a few characteristics as favorites, the first that comes to mind is bought in. The guys and girls that afforded me to actually have the opportunity to coach them. Not everyone comes mentally prepared or even psychologically prepared to be coached. So bought in comes to mind, committed. Those that are going to show up every day and give their best effort. It's not always about the talent that the individual houses, but it's the willingness to buy into team goals and just allow themselves to be coached and developed.
That's awesome. Those are characteristics that I know that all of us coaches look for, and hopefully at Valley Christian, those are characteristics that we can use to define what being a warrior really means. Now, that said, being a warrior is kind of a general thing to say. When you think about being a warrior, what does being a warrior mean to you?
Another great question. When I think of a warrior and what it means to be a warrior, I kind of reflect on the book of Joshua. And, the Lord is speaking to Joshua when he took over from Moses, and he admonished him more than a few times to be strong and courageous. So to me, to embody what a warrior is, it's strength and courage. And when I think of courage, I'm talking, more so about strength. I'm talking more so about mentally, physically, and spiritually strong. A few athletes right off the top pop into my head. Terrence Worthy exemplified strength. Joseph Calderon exemplified strength. When I think of courage, One player comes to mind. It's Clint Dudley. Here was a kid, that over the course of time developed into a basketball player. When he first came into the program, he didn't have the prerequisite skills to necessarily make the team. And quite frankly, what we utilized as a tool to progress kids through to making the cut was our preseason conditioning program. And it was pretty tough, I'd have to say. There were Saturday mornings when the guys would have to wake up and they'd have to run up the golf course hill at Burnell. We had timed miles, and here was a kid that continually showed up. He missed the benchmarks on several occasions, and I remember we came down to the last try at the mile. It was after a long day of conditioning, and he still missed that mile. And I looked at him, and I want to say tears were kind of beginning to well up. And I said, "Hey, Clint, we didn't make it." And he says, "Well, Coach, can I run it again?" So this was going to be his second mile that day. So, the sun is setting. We're out there on the VC track, and here he goes. He's taking off on the second mile. I hope he's not listening, because he's going to find, he's probably going to judge my character. But truth be told, he didn't make that mile either, Rob. But I didn't really have the courage to cut the kid. So what I told him, I said, "Hey, Clint, congratulations, you made the mile." And he looked at me, he says, "Well, Coach, I know that I didn't." I said, "Well, Clint, you made the team anyway." So it was just one of those, courageous, right? Courageous to me, Rob, is showing up. Keep showing up and show up even when it's hard. And he embodied that, so a warrior, be strong and courageous.
Very, very cool. I'm sure that moment stacks up there, but do you have a favorite memory from your time at Valley Christian?
There's so many memories, Rob. It's hard to settle on one as being the favorite, but I have to say that I've got a few of them. There were some on-court things, there were some off-court type things. If we were to go back to that 2001 season, yes, we were a state finalist. So we made it to the state championship. We had a lot of success along the way, but it was the road to the quarterfinal game. It was in Jackson, California. So early on, Jackson was, I'd have to say, a 4 to 5 hour bus ride. So we left quite early. Everyone's on the bus. The parents are, caravanning. They're ahead of the bus. And, so several hours into the bus now, I'm going to date myself. There was no Google Maps at the time. These were still, I want to say, hard maps we were using. Okay. And the bus driver, after a couple hours, he motions me to come up to the front of the bus. And he says, "Well, Coach," he says, we have a little problem. I said, "So what's going on?" He says, "Well," he goes, "I'm lost." And my heart stops. I said, "So what do you mean you're lost?" He goes, "I'm lost." And so panic sets in. So the parents, after a while, they're ringing our phones because they've made it to the gym, and they're asking us, "Where are we at? Where are you at?" I said, "We're lost." And so we pull over, and an administrator gives us directions, right? And so now it's dark, and it's storming, it's raining, and we're making our way through, and we finally get to the school. Okay. Here's the worst twist in the story. We get there, the kids are tired. They've been on this bus for 4 hours. We go through the emotions of getting lost. We're not going to make it to the game. We get to the game. I shuttle the kids into the locker room to hurry them to get dressed. And I walk into the gym and I find the administrator, and the clock for warm-ups is winding down. And there's probably 10 minutes before the start of the game. And I asked the administrator, I said, hey, look, we were lost, as you know, on the way. There's 10 minutes on the clock. Are you going to reset the time and give us at least, a little extra time to stretch our legs out and kind of acclimate ourselves? He said, unfortunately, coach, he said that 10 minutes that's ticking down, that's what you have for the remaining of warm-ups, and we're going to start the game on time. So I rushed back into the locker room, and this was amazing. No pregame speech. Okay. It's get dressed, run out there. By the time we take the floor, the clock expires. We have enough time to huddle up, say a quick prayer, and go Warriors. We break our huddle, and we're off with a jump ball.
Wow. And then you win the game.
And Rob, not only do we win the game, this is where coaching is overrated, right? And talented players win games, right? We play probably the best game I'd seen that team play all year long.
No pregame speech.
No pregame speech. So Coach Cotton could take none of the credit. So it was just a remarkable memory. The kids signed autographs after the game, and they were showered with all sorts of praise because Jackson, California had never seen anything like it. So, that's one of the memories. Also, winning a WCAL championship. I would have to say, Rob, that in and of itself was the benchmark of my coaching career at Valley Christian. I think we all know how tough it is to navigate through the competition of the West Catholic Athletic League. That particular season was a phenomenal one in that heading into the playoffs, we were pitted up against Midi. We had lost to them 2 times in the regular season, one of those being on their home court, whereas we were up 2 late in the game. They ended up with the very last possession. They beat us on a last-second shot, a 3-pointer, and they beat us by 1. So needless to say, there was a lot riding on that playoff game to get to the WCAL championship. Well, that game could potentially be one of the most intense games I've ever coached in. We come out with a victory there, and we're planning to play Sarah, who was our arch nemesis that year. We had split with them. Well, lo and behold, Reardon makes it into the playoffs as the 4th place team. They upset Sarah that night, and we end up with Reardon for the WCAL championship game. And, this game was staged at Foothill College. It was packed to the rafters. You couldn't hear yourself speak. You couldn't even hear yourself think in the moment. And we would go on to win a nip and tuck game against Reardon that went on down, to the last couple seconds. And, so those 2 would be 2 of the, bigger memories, I'd have to say.
That is awesome. Very cool. Excellent stuff. Coach, at Valley Christian, one of our mottos is that we're continually on this quest for excellence. So my question to you is, how do you define excellence?
Rob, when I think of excellence, there was a saying that I used quite often with the girls, and it was taken from Aristotle. And it simply said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. It's not an act, but a habit. You've often heard it said that practice makes perfect. Well, I would tend to disagree with that, in that perfect practice makes perfect, thereby leading towards excellence. So I would just just handed off to Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do and what we practice, therefore drives towards excellence.
Coach, what stands out as the best compliment you've ever received?
This one, may catch you a little off guard. The best compliment that I've ever received, Rob, is to be looked upon and simply called coach. When individuals invite you in and they allow you to become a mentor, and then as they grow, I'm dating myself here, but quite a few of my players now, they're in professions of their own, a few are teachers, some are married and have kids. And as we still relate, these individuals having made the transition from young adults to full-on adults, they still refer to you as coach when they probably very rightfully could, now tag me with Steve or Mr. Cotton, but they still use that tag. It's a tag that I don't take lightly. I've had great coaches and men in my life that I still look up to and refer to simply as coach. So to be looked upon and referred to as coach would be the greatest compliment.
Speaking of being a coach, what is a common myth about coaching, and how would you debunk it?
Well, as you said in your opening, I transitioned from the boys on over to the girls program in my last couple years. And while enduring that transition, more than on a few instances, occasions, individuals came up to me and they says, well, women are more difficult to coach. And what I found, Rob, was that to truly be a myth. And if I were to debunk that, what I would say to that is that women, I found, and this is kind of funny, Kobe with his passing was referred to as a girl's dad. It took me 2 years to realize, Rob, that I was a girls coach. Girls have an initial respect level. They're more open in expressing their appreciation. And then here's the kicker, and I'll kind of share a quick story with you on this. They have a strong desire to please the coach and give their best effort to not only you, but to the others. And when I think about the simplicity of coaching women, I remember my first summer with the girls program. I had invited all those that had wished to try out for the team to join us in summer league over at Foothill College. And so now we show up over at Foothill, we probably have 17, 18, maybe even 20 girls, right? So we've got more girls than there were chairs to even seat. And, Coach Cotton, being it was my first pass through with the girls, I'm a little nervous. And so the game starts. I've got AJ Newton, Jasmine Davis out there. These are a few girls that would go on to play Division I basketball. Well, due to the size of our roster that evening, I figured I'd have to make quick subs. Well, I was a little nervous, had a little anxiety about subbing AJ out of the game for the first time because I knew the sort of reaction I would get from boys, they'll go unnamed here, and I subbed them out early in the first quarter before they even got to work up a good lather within the game. Well, long story short, I sub AJ out. She runs off the court. She gives me a high five. The rest of the girls, without my unctioning, they stand up. She gives them all high fives and she sits down. And I kind of paused to myself. I said, well, whoa, that's different. Then I said, a couple more minutes went by and I subbed Jasmine Davis out. She runs up, smile on her face. She gives me a high five, and she high fives everyone down the bench, and she sits down. Then I said, praise God. This is where I was supposed to have been the whole time.
Very awesome.
So women, any of the women that are listening, I truly, truly enjoyed coaching the girls. And those 2 years I rode off into the sunset, and it afforded me another 4 years to sit in the stands and watch my very own daughter play college basketball. Here I am, I'm the reason why she played, but I pretty much missed the majority of her games, and I was blessed with the opportunity to watch her college team compete for 4 years. And it was a joy to watch them accept coaching and be coached.
Super cool. Coach Cotton, if you could spend 1 hour with 3 different people, dead or alive, so that's 3 separate hours, each with a different person, who would those 3 people be, and why would you choose them?
Well, one would be Kobe Bryant. Most people know that I am a Laker fan. I am a odd Laker fan in that I have no problem cheering for the Warriors other than when they're playing the Lakers. Kind of creates a little drama within the house, but Kobe Bryant was my favorite basketball player. So I would have loved to have sat down with Kobe, and it would be his second act that I'd like to talk to him about, how he transitioned from being the Kobe Bryant athlete into Kobe Bryant, the girl dad that took on a large initiative to promote the women's game, and what drove him to do it in the manner in which he was doing it. Colin Kaepernick comes to mind. Here's an individual that has, ascended to the highest level of professional sports, but yet he finds something burning within inside of him that would drive social change and have an impact on a nation that would potentially or could potentially sacrifice his whole career, but he gave himself to something that was even greater than him. So I would love to sit down and, spend an hour with Cap. And then lastly, Steph Curry comes to mind. Here's a guy that by sheer stature does not meet up to the metrics of what a professional athlete should look like, let alone a basketball player when the average size is 6'6". He doesn't match up with what we would consider to be the athletic metrics. He doesn't jump out of the gym. He's not exceedingly fast, but yet he's carved out a phenomenal career. He's a 2-time MVP, a world champion, and then to boot, a solidly based Christian, a man of faith that honors his wife, his family, so I would love to, sit down with a Steph Curry.
Great choices. All 3, I'm sure would be phenomenal hours to spend with those 3. My last question, and kind of the way that I like to end the podcast is, Coach, if you could go back to high school and give yourself a piece of advice, and then there's kind of two parts to this, a piece of advice when you were an underclassman and a piece of advice when you were an upperclassman. Hopefully there's some younger warriors out there that are listening that can take this to heart. What advice would that be? What lessons have you learned over the years that you could go back and help yourself with?
I'll blend it all into one. I would have to say that the time goes by fast. So it's real easy to take it all for granted. As a high school athlete, I was blessed to be with one that I still to this day, a coach that was one of the best coaches I'd had, regardless of levels. Uh, so as a young athlete, I was blessed to play varsity sports earlier than most. And back in my day, that was uncommon to make a varsity team as a sophomore, and especially being that we were one of the best teams in the section at that time, a very competitive situation. So as a young athlete, uh, I would say that I wished I would have taken that time a little bit more seriously, understanding that it's fleeting and it goes by really fast. And I would have invested more time in the weight room. And then as an older player, that I would have taken on even more responsibility as a team captain, as one that uh, had an opportunity to not only make a team early, but get early playing time. And that would serve itself as being invaluable in leading others. You know, take on a more active role in the development of those that came behind me and try to emphasize a stronger level of leadership.
All right, Coach. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be on the show. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for sharing some stories with us. I know that that your experience is one that has left an invaluable footprint at Valley Christian High School.
Thanks for having me, Rob.